Blue light flashing down the railroad track, blue smoke rolling from the old smokestack. Oh, blue train, don't leave me behind.
Hello folks, welcome to Outdoors with Bud. I'm your host, Bud Fields. You know, recently I gave you some tips on preparing your boat trailer for the fishing and boating season. Now I'd like to give you some ideas of the things you can check on your boat. To begin with, when I first get my boat out of storage, the first thing I do is take it to the gas station. I fill my gas tank up with fresh gasoline, and you never want to use anything less than 87 octane. Okay, once I've got the gas in there, I also put in 3 brand new trolling motor deep cycle batteries. We've done a segment here recently comparing the automobile batteries with the deep cycle batteries. I've got 3 brand new batteries in here. I've got one for my starter motor, and I've got 2 that runs my electronics and that runs my trolling motor. Okay, now there's also some lubricant that you need to use inside of your boat. Now, a lot of the older outboards years ago, you had to mix the oil in with the gas at approximately a 50-to-1 ratio. I've got an oil injection system in my boat that all I got to do is simply put some oil in that, and there's an oil pump in there that automatically mixes it for me. And what I use a lot of the Lubrimatic by Plus Element, and it has to be a TCW3 motor oil. This is not the same type of oil that you would use in your vehicle, but you wouldn't run your car or your truck without any oil in it. The same thing with an outboard motor. So pick you up some TCW3 2-cycle motor oil, and I also, after I fill my reservoir up with it, I also carry plenty of this in the boat with me in case I get out and need it. I was talking about putting gasoline in. What you have to be careful of a lot of times is you got to put some gas stabilizer in it. Pick you up some good quality gas stabilizer. Once again, this is made by the Lubrimatic company, and 1 ounce of this will take care and stabilize 2.5 gallons of gasoline, and I do that every time I add gas to the boat. Another thing, on my lower unit, each year I remove the plug and I take all the old grease out of it and I replace it with brand new grease. And once again, this is a Power Pro by Lubrimatic. This is synthetic blend. You have to make sure you've got the proper lubricant inside of your motors. You're going to have problems. Inside of my motor, I like to start out every year. I put in 6 brand new spark plugs, properly spaced. Also, any filter in there, gas filter and air filter, I put new filters in it. That way I know I'm not going to get any dirt sucked into the carburation. And once you do all that, you're pretty much ready to go. Now, one thing on batteries, you have to keep them charged up. If I was to go to a tournament away from home, I've got 3 batteries. Normally, I would have to have 3 different battery chargers. Not so now. I have an onboard 3-bank battery charger. All I need to do to take with me now is simply an extension cord to plug it into an outlet and plug it in right there at the side of the boat, and it keeps all 3 of my batteries completely charged up. The next day when I'm ready to go to the lake, I simply unplug that extension cord, put the extension cord away, and I hit the water. Okay folks, welcome to my office. This is what I consider my office. This is where I spend a lot of my time during the summer, is behind the steering wheel on my boat. Now, I've got the outboard all ready to go. There's a lot of things that I got to check inside of here. I've got a bunch of gauges, and if it's not going to do any good to have these gauges if they don't work and if you don't know how to use them. For example, I've got a water pressure gauge over here to my immediate left. I make sure that my water pump's working, because it's just like a water pump on your outboard on your car. If it locks up, the pump goes out, you're going to overheat it and you're going to have extensive damage to it. Also, I've got a voltmeter right here, and it tells me what the condition of my cranking battery is, which should run, of course it's a 12-volt system, should run 12 volts or slightly over. If it gets under that, I know I've got an issue. At the top left-hand corner, I've got a speedometer. Of course, it tells me how fast, how many miles per hour I'm running. This boat has been capable of running 70, 72 miles an hour. Now, one thing you got to remember with that, ladies and gentlemen, is you got to remember, on a boat, there's no brakes. Would you get in your automobile and drive 70 miles an hour down the street with no brakes? You got to constantly be in full control of your boat. Over at the far right-hand side, I've got another gauge. It's my tachometer. It tells me how many RPMs that my motor is turning back here.
There is a certain tack spec that you don't want to go over that, or if you over tack it, turn too many RPMs, you're going to blow the motor. I've also got a fuel gauge, and you want to make sure you got plenty, especially if you're going to make a long trip from the boat ramp. And I've also got a trim and tilt gauge over here. What that does, my outboard motor, I've got a control right here that looks very much like a turn signal. If I get into shallow water, I can actually tilt that motor up and down, just without even taking my hands off the steering wheel. On my immediate right here up here in the front, I've got a GPS system with a built-in fish locator. What this does, this is almost like a television screen. I've got a transducer on the back of the boat that it gives me like an inverted cone, and it interprets what type of a bottom, if it's a solid bottom, whether it's a soft bottom like mud or sand. It will also show me like if there's any stumps down there or rocks, and it will also tell me the fish. Now I've also got a series of toggle switches all along the bottom here. In my boat, I've got two aerated live wells. I've got one at the back and I've got one at the front. These live wells have got aerator pumps in them. What that is just something like you could refer to like an aquarium. When I'm out fishing the tournament, I can put water in these. I can turn these pumps on. It will pump the water. It'll recirculate the water, and it also adds oxygen in it. And when the weather gets real warm, it'll help you keep your fish alive. Then also I've got what is known as a bilge pump. I've got two bilge pumps in here. If I'm out, if it's raining, pouring down rain, water gets inside of the boat. Years ago, you used to have to take a coffee can or something and bail the water out. I can hit a pump here, an aerator or a bilge pump, and it's going to actually pump that back out for me. I don't have to go to all that problem. All right, I've also got an accessory switch. I've got some LED lights in here that I can light my inside of my boat up for if I'm fishing at night. And I turn that accessory switch on, hit those lights, and they come on. It's really neat. And one of the most important things on the boat is what they call a kill switch. What this does, when I'm wearing my life jacket, I hook this lanyard up to that life jacket. What happens, if I'm going real fast across the water, if I was to break a steering cable or something or lose control of my boat, if I'm ejected from the boat, what this does, this disconnects and it automatically shuts the outboard off. Years ago, if you had an accident like that, and if you didn't have a way of shutting that outboard off, what happens, a boat has a natural tendency, when nobody's hanging on to it, to just keep going in circles. If you're laying out there in the water and that boat's going in circles, you can have some pretty serious injuries by that boat coming around and chopping you back up. Okay folks, once I get to where I'm going to be fishing, I shut my outboard off. I'm done back there in the back of the boat behind this console. I come up to the front. This is where I'm going to be for like an 8-hour bass tournament. Now I've got the outboard shut off. You want to know how I'm going to control my boat? Very simple. I've got a 24-volt trolling motor right here. I raise this up, I can turn that down. I've got a foot control right here. Different ways I turn that. If you watch that head of that trolling motor, I can turn that. I can make the boat go straight ahead, I can turn it right, I can turn it left, I can make it go backwards. I've got a power button on there. If you see that propeller's turning now, that's all foot control. Now one thing about that right there, occasionally it's not a bad idea to take that propeller off. Remember me mentioning earlier about the prop on the back of the boat? The same thing with this. You can get a lot of monofilament fishing line inside of there, and it's going to tear up some seals. So occasionally take that propeller off there, and it only takes maybe 10 or 15 seconds. Another extremely handy item to have is back there at the back by the console. I had the GPS, the LCR system. It's handy to have another one of those up towards the front of the boat because I cannot see what's going on back there. I've got this one. This one will also give me the temperature of the water. It'll also give me like whatever my depth is, and it'll show me the bottom. It's just like a TV camera if you was to stick it over the bottom. And you want to make sure if you've got these that they're working and working properly. So that's why I come out here quite a bit, and I'll start them up and I'll check them out and make sure that they are working adequately. Then all those toggle switches that I showed you I had back here, I've got the same thing up here on this little panel on the front of my boat. For instance, I told you about the trim and tilt on the outboard motor. And if I get in shallow water, I don't have to walk all the way back at the back to raise that motor up. I've got a toggle switch here, and all I got to do is take my foot and hit that button, and it will raise and lower that outboard motor just like you saw earlier. Also, I've also got another accessory switch here. I've got some lights for my rod boxes and my storage compartments. All I got to do is hit this switch on and off, and I've got instant access to that. And I was talking earlier about the aerator pumps. I can control those pumps from right here on the front. I've got an automatic and a manual switch right here on this panel for like the front and the rear live well pumps. I can control all that. I've also got a timer where that pump will come on every 2 minutes. I can set it to 4 minutes, or I can set it to 6 minutes, and I never have to climb off the front of this boat. I can do all that from the front, and that makes it a lot easier when you're getting into fish that you don't have to stop what you're doing to go back at the back. But once again, if you've got all this stuff, you got to make sure that it's working. You don't want to get up there on the lake, have a buddy back there fishing with you, then you catch a bunch of fish, maybe you've got an aerator pump that's not working, and you're going to lose your fish. That's not fun at all, and it's going to cost you a lot of points, and sometimes it can cost you friendships. Okay, folks, I want to thank you for joining us today on Outdoors with Bud. I hope the information I've given you on preparing your boat trailer and preparing your boat is going to save you a lot of distress once you get up there. Take a little bit of time before you leave, check it all out. And I want to thank you once again. Take a kid fishing, and God bless. We'll see you again.
Blue light flashing down the railroad track, blue smoke rolling from the old smokestack. Oh, blue train, don't leave me behind.